Well, don't adjust your monitors. You are not seeing things. I have got a new gimbal on my camera that'll give you a little bit better view on our next videos. This is where we currently are on our SD70 project. Things are going along nicely. Got a lot more to do, so don't worry, there will be plenty to do in the next videos. But so far we're getting pleasing results. I appreciate everybody joining me and hope to see you in the next video. And by the time we get this video going, it should be Independence Day for all of us here in America, and for all those not in America, happy 4th day of July. So sit back and relax and enjoy the video. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm Nathan with Mercury Models. And since you're here with me again, I take it I didn't make your eyes and ears bleed for my intro. I appreciate you coming back. Looking forward to everything that we can do together. Quick shout out to my friend Tony and Mr. Fox. Appreciate your guys' very positive comment on my intro video on YouTube. I look up to you guys, and your positive comments really help and give me confidence. So we're going to jump right in and start on our model weathering here. As you guys saw in the intro video, we're going to start learning how to weather our model railroad equipment and locomotives. As I mentioned, on my Athearn Genesis here, I've already masked all the clear parts, and I do have a layer of dusting effect from my airbrush already applied. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my SD90 here and start at the beginning and get us caught up to our SD70, and once we get caught up to this, then I'll take over on my SD70 and we'll complete this process all the way to the finish point. So that's what our plan is today. So let me get everything cleared off, get something nice and cold to drink, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, so here we are. We've got everything set up. Now, first thing I want to mention is achieving results that might be pleasing can take some practice. So what I would recommend is purchasing a locomotive that you're not really attached to, I would say. This was one of the first locomotives I purchased on eBay. It's a TFM, and it's a road that I will never model. And as you can kind of see, I've done a little bit of weathering on this one, and this is kind of my test subject. I got it on eBay for about $36. It's an Athearn blue box, and these locomotives are really difficult to modify and change to digital command control or DCC. I just use this to test different ways to weather and see how it works. That way when I do apply it to the real thing, I'm not at a loss if it doesn't work out. So I would highly recommend purchasing or using a cheap test subject. Set that one aside. This is a Kato, or Kato, depends on how you want to pronounce it, SD90. Now, this particular model, it was modeled after a locomotive that had 4,000 horsepower. The bigger sister or brother to the SD90s when they first came out were boasting 6,000 horsepower. But with fuel consumption, it wasn't very practical to run 6,000 horsepower. So they reduced the engine to a more economical 4,000 horsepower. And due to the size of the locomotive, they just quit making it. It's too big for a 4,000 horsepower when you can run a 4,000 horsepower locomotive that's quite a bit shorter. So the SD90s are not in production anymore, but they are fun to have, and it would be a fun thing to model and run on your layout. One of the most important aspects of modeling is research. Research what you're trying to model, and if you can even find the exact locomotive that you're trying to model, and how the dust and dirt and road grime and paint chips have all accumulated over time on the actual model. There is a website called railphotos.net that you can go to and search any locomotive on any road anywhere in the world, and just regular rail fans, as they call themselves, take photos of these locomotives and post it to this website. And so you pretty much can find pictures of any locomotive anywhere at any time. Basically wherever that locomotive has been, there's usually pictures of it. So just as a reference, I've found a couple pictures of an SD70 which we are going to model, and save those pictures. So I'm going to show you those pictures right now. Now, there's a couple of interesting modeling opportunities in some of those photos. If you notice, in the one photo, the front cabin door has been replaced, and it's just the primer. It's not the regular Union Pacific colors. So that's something interesting that we could model. So I'll show you that photo right here. One thing that I am interested in doing with our SD70 is the paint chipping, and on top of the SD70 roofs, and that gray for some reason just doesn't seem to withstand very much, and I think that's a very nice looking modeling aspect that we can do. So that's one thing that I want to do with our SD70. So our first step is to mask off all of our clear parts. It'll be our windshield, our headlights, ditch lights if your locomotive has them equipped. Don't forget our window in the back of the cabs right here, and our rear headlight also needs to get masked off. So the easiest way I found to do it is always make sure that you have a sharp blade, and we're going to just take a piece of masking tape. I like the blue painter's masking tape. For one, doesn't leave the residue of your normal masking tape, and you don't have to have quite the sharp edges, so I'm not going to use Tamiya tape on this. So what we're going to do, just place it right on top of our cab windows here. Now I'm going to grab a toothpick, and I'm going to rub that masking tape into the windows. Two things that's doing this is going to do, it's sticking that masking tape onto the window better, and it's also helping define the edges of where that window stops in the frame. So now we get our masking tape and we can cut along the edges of this window. It's going to give us a nice, quick, easy way to mask off these windows. Carefully peel that off. And there we go. Nice and easy. Our job is done. So let me bring you in here on this next set. I know I'm going to have a hard time keeping you in shot, so if I ever slide out of shot, just yell at me. I'll hear you eventually. Okay, so we'll just place it down there. Take our toothpick or cocktail stick or sharp pointy piece of wood, whatever you want to call it. Rub that in there like so. Make sure you get your edges so they're nice and defined. Bring in our hobby knife. Just gently trim. You don't have to push really hard, because then you'll start scoring your glass, and you don't want to do that. So get your edges. Doesn't have to be very precise, just want to make sure that the majority of the window's covered. And I kind of missed on that one a little bit, so I'm just going to let that lay it back down and recut it a little bit more to the edge. There we go. And that piece is being a pain in the butt, but I think we're going to call it good. There we go. Okay, do one more window, and then I think I will fast forward and skip all the monotony. Rub that tape into the grooves, make sure it's got a good bond. Trim it here. And there we go. 4 windows masked off. Pretty easy. Alright, so I'm going to continue on. I'll fast forward the video. So here we go. Alright, so I'm going to be doing the front windows here, and there are windshield wipers here. all you have to do is just gently lift the windshield wipers off and get them out of your way so you can tape off the front windshield. Gently prime up so they don't go flying somewhere. So there we go. Piece of cake. Here we go. Okay, so we got all of our clear surfaces masked off. If you notice that I'm wearing a glove on one hand but not on the other, one of the big enemies that we'll face modeling in model railroad or in plastic model building is fingerprints. Unfortunately, we can't control them. They're always going to be there. So I like to wear a glove on the hand that is always going to be handling for the majority. That way I can reduce those fingerprints, especially on the flat surfaces where I'm grabbing the model here. Now every now and then when you put your finger on for stabilization, that's fine, but for the majority I like to use a glove to keep fingerprints at a minimum. Now, as you notice, I did remove some hand railing to get to those rear cab windows. Usually you don't need to, but on this particular SD70 it made it a lot easier. And on a lot of these locomotives, they just slide in and out. Just get your X-Acto knife in there and just gently coax them out, and they just slide in and out. Just get them out of the way and prevent breaking them. Alright, so I've switched over to the SD70. I think other than a really light coat of kind of a dust layer, we're at the same place that SD90 is. So we're gonna continue with this SD70. Now, what I like to use is a Pacific double action airbrush, and this is a siphon type airbrush, so the color cup goes in the bottom here and color goes down and it gets siphoned up into the airbrush and then sprayed out. Now this airbrush works great for me, but I don't like how much paint it uses. For instance, if I want to just paint a little bit, I have to double the amount of paint because it has to fill all of this to get into the airbrush. So I think once I get enough money saved up, I'm going to get one of those gravity fed airbrushes where the color cup sits up here on top, and you can use a lot less paint that way. So I'm going to use a double action Pacific airbrush for my airbrushing. And for an air compressor, I have sitting right next to my desk a Craftsman 120 psi 1 horsepower air compressor. So, and it's pretty loud, so what I generally do is fill it up, turn it off, spray until I'm basically out of air, and then I turn it on and let it rumble the house and wait till it's full, then spray again. A full tank will generally last me quite a bit, so I'm not really concerned with that. So for paints, I am most comfortable and most organized with my Tamiya line of paints here, and you can see how organized I am when it comes to my paints. So for the dust layer, I like to use a gray. Now I don't have a specific color that I like to use. Light gray, sea gray, medium gray, panzer gray, just a light gray. I prefer this. This is a XF66. It's a light gray. That's what I've been using. Getting pretty low on it. But if you think your dust is it's not going to be black, because that's generally your engine soot and exhaust and grease, and it's not going to be white because snow is not going to last forever on your models. So gray is kind of your good in between dust. For a fading color, a lot of sun saturation, gray is a good choice. So we're going to go with our light gray from Tamiya. When I first started trying to spray the Tamiya paints, I was diluting it with a water and alcohol mix, and when I was spraying, it ended up having like a rough texture. I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong, so I sent a message to my friend Tony at Helgen, and he said that basically what I was doing was I was spackling my models. The paint was drying before it got to the model, so I was just spraying chunks of paint. So he recommended, instead of using the water and alcohol, using the thinner designed for Tamiya paint by Tamiya. So I started using that, and it solved the problem. So it was magical. Another little trick that I like to keep on hand is Windex. Now make sure that you get the Windex or window cleaner, Windoline, with ammonia in it. The ammonia actually dissolves the acrylic paint, so it's a good cheap way to clean your airbrush, because you just run it through it, it eats away and dissolves that paint. That way you don't have to waste as much of your Tamiya thinner. I put my thinner in a nice little mini condiment bottle here to make it easier to pour inside of the cups. Okay, so use our XF66 light gray and our Tamiya thinner. You want to make sure that you pour thinners first. Like so. And then our paint. You can use a pipette or just straight pour, whatever you want to do. I like to pour, that way I don't waste a pipette. If you clean off the edge of your bottle before you put the lid on, your lids won't stick as bad. Just a little semi-pro maybe, not pro tip. Okay, and to mix your paint in the cup, you plug the end, give it a little bit of air, and that'll mix your cup. What you're doing is you're blowing air out to the nozzle, and since you have it plugged, it's forcing its way down into the cup. So that's a easy way to mix, but be careful. Give yourself too much air and it'll explode everywhere. And if you notice my fingers, that's what happened. It exploded everywhere. So don't do that. It's a mess. Grab a glove here. So when we mixed it, I didn't really mix it 50-50 or 70-30. I just mixed it. You do want to make sure that when you're painting a thin coat like what we're going to do, you want to mix it a little thin, because since it's going to be a dusting effect, you want to have it a little bit more see-through. So remember, we already have a light coat on this already, so we don't want to put too much more on. Or if you want to have a really faded locomotive, then you want to put some more on. More on. So what we're going to do is just give it a light coat with our airbrush, just really lightly. Probably won't even be able to see that there's a coat going on. And don't overdo it, because if you get too carried away, then you'll go too far. And it's always helpful to have a locomotive off to the side that you can compare it to. So there you can see how light we are already. Sliding off there. Bring it around to the other side. Lightly spray this side here. Nice even light coat. Make sure you get down on the trucks in the fuel tank. Get the ends nice and light. Remember, it's just dust. There we go. Nice thing about airbrushing is it does dry pretty quick. If you were putting on a heavier coat, then you could use, say, like a hair dryer to help the drying process go a little quicker. Okay, so I think I'm pretty pleased with how faded it is at this point in time. Tilt it up here. It's still a little bit of a shine to it, which isn't too bad, but that's a pretty decent base coat for our weathering here. Okay, so the next step that we can do is fade the paint on the roof. Now, of course, when it's outside, the prototype, when it's outside, the roof is going to see all the sun, no matter what direction the sun's coming from. You're always going to see it from the roof. So what we can do is we can fade the roof a little bit more than we did the sides. So we're just going to keep going with the light gray and lightly spray the roof, going down the center. The sides of the cab a little bit there. Alright, now I'm going to spin it around and get it from this angle so we catch all the nooks and crannies on the sides. Particularly in the middles where you're going to see a lot of the fading. So we get a little bit lighter there. So again, spin it around. Make sure we don't create any shadows in our airbrushing. There we go. Bring you down here. Not shaking you to death. Okay, kind of pick it up there. Camera, how it's light here in the middle. On that leading edge, it's lightened up. Okay. Once again, if you aren't sure exactly what your results are looking at, just grab your standby. You can see our color difference already. A lot lighter. So Krylon makes pretty decent line of clear finishes. Got matte finish, crystal clear, and then the gloss clear finish. I use the matte finish a lot, crystal clear a little bit, and I don't use the gloss much anymore. I've discovered the American version of Future Floor Wax, and that's Pledge Floor Care. Now this is a wax that is designed to go on floors, but if you spray it on your model, it gives it a clear gloss coat that'll protect it, and it's also good for a couple steps during the weathering process where you're using washes such as pin washes. So this is what we'll apply to protect our current paint coat. Okay, for this gloss coat of our Pledge Floor Care, I've switched over to my single action Pache. That word hurts. It hurts to say words. They're tough. Pache single action. This was my first airbrush. Single action because you just push this down for air, and this is your needle adjustment right here. You turn it to adjust the amount of paint that you get. It's a decent paintbrush, but it's what made it difficult for me is when you want to do fine work, you had to adjust constantly, get the pattern you liked, and then you had to stick with it until you wanted to change to a different flow. Then you had to adjust it to where you wanted it, and then there you go, you're stuck. So I moved on to that double action airbrush, and I highly recommend double action airbrush no matter which way you go, be it a siphon or a gravity fed. Okay, so just going to put a little bit of our pledge into here. One thing I've learned is don't leave the cap on this bottle because it'll dry, and it takes a wrench to get them off sometimes, so don't leave the cap on. Alright, put it on like so. Check our flow. There we go. This stuff smells good, I think. Okay, so we're just gonna lightly spray a nice thin coat. Make sure we get all the sides, up and down, top and bottom. Get the front. Okay. Let that dry for a minute and I'll be right back. Okay, we've given it about 10 minutes to dry. Now you want to have I'll start with a light coat just to give it a base to stick to. Now your second coat and even a third coat if you wish can be a little bit heavier, but that first coat just needs to be nice and light. So with our second coat, give it a little bit more. You don't want it to be sprayed too heavy. You don't want it to be pooling anywhere. Get our front again. I need one of those nifty little spinny roundy turntable things, don't I? Okay, there we go. I think 2 coats will be good enough for us because it's just one layer out of a couple more. Okay, so we've got quite a bit that we didn't use. Just take the lid off. Make sure we get all that drained out so it doesn't leak everywhere. And then, as Tony would say, we can throw it away back in the bottle. This big bottle of Pledge or Future or whichever you find in your area will last you quite a while with a lot of applications in there. There we go. Don't put the lid on. Okay, so we're going to let this dry for probably 30 minutes and then we will move on to our next step. Alright, so our future floor pledge wax seal coat has had adequate time to dry, about 30 minutes. Now our model is safe to handle. Our fade paint has been sealed in by that clear coat, but I still wouldn't recommend handling it without a glove because there's still fingerprints that you can get on to the model and it can really affect the future results. Next thing that we're going to do, the next step of our weathering process, since we got everything faded, is to work on the road grime and road dust and the dirt and everything that accumulates down on the bottom from all the traveling. Now, looking back at those pictures again, I've noticed that a lot of them have a clean spot right here on the back of the fuel tank, and I'll show you the picture of it right now. So that, I'm not exactly sure what caused that, if it's some kind of airflow is causing that dust or dirt not to accumulate there, or a fuel leak or water leak, condensation from the air conditioner, who knows. But that's kind of interesting, and currently I'm looking at that picture myself. So I don't think I'm going to model that specifically, but I might make it a little light back here when we go to that step. I'm going to use Tamiya's red brown XF64. It's a good brown dirt, gives a little bit of slight red for kind of maybe a rust. But this red brown gives really good results, so we're going to use that. So I'm going to start with a little bit of thinner. We aren't going to need a whole bunch. And we're going to go aim roughly for a 50-50 mixture. So we're going to actually look for some substance in this couple coats. We don't want it to be, completely clear. Alright, here's my stir stick. Make sure you just stir it up really well. Get all the stuff off the bottom and the sides. Give it another shake. Alright, so roughly 50-50. Doesn't have to be exact. Wipe off the side of the bottle. And make sure you put the lid on it so you don't pull it Tony and paint your desk by knocking it over. Now we're going to mix it just by plugging the end, applying just a little bit of air. Okay, so what we want to do is just a nice light coat. Now, this is one part of this weathering process that you can easily go overboard on. So we're just going to start on really light coats. I'm not overly concerned about the wheels right now because we will clean those later. Get the bottom edge of your fuel tank here. Okay. Make sure you get the front snow plow also. It's going to pick up a lot of dirt, especially if they're running in MU, multi-unit lashed up. You'll have the locomotive in front or behind kicking up a lot of the road grime onto the front of this locomotive. Nice light coat. And I don't think I'm going to set it on that side just because we have that fresh paint on it, so I'll use my little plastic caddy there, lay it on its side that, well, like there. One of the nice things about this weathering is you don't have to make both sides identical, because chances are when you're running this on your layout, you're only going to be seeing it going by on one side, and then by the time it comes around and it's on the other side, you'll kind of forget what this side looks like. It's a little cheat. So if you want, you can make one side completely different from the other, so it's almost a different locomotive as it comes by the second time than it was the first time. That's your preference. I'm going to try and keep mine fairly uniform on this one, but it's not going to be perfectly identical. Alright, so we're going to get the back here. Nice and light. Get that bottom edge of the fuel tank. There we go. So a nice light coat has already given us some pretty decent results. And if you are pretty happy with your current results and you're afraid of going further and maybe ruin it, then stop there. That's fine. It could have gotten a bath, you know, a month or two ago at one of the Union Pacific yards. It can be whatever you want to make it. But I'm going to go a little bit further. And also, you want to get a little bit of grime and dirt up here on the bottom of the cab too, because that dirt's going to get kicked up off these trucks onto the bottom of that cab, and even along the bottom side of that footwalk. Well, get you in shot. There I go again. I heard you yelling. I heard it. Get that cab a little bit there at the bottom. Just a little bit. Don't need much. Let me get the front of that. Walk up there in the front. Snow plow. you want to go a little heavy on the edges, that's fine. There we go. Trying to be careful here. Spray different angles so you catch all the different nooks and crannies. The bottom edge of that cab. I'm currently using about 20 psi, 22 psi for my airbrush. Started off using a little bit higher, but I found that it was harder to prevent the paint from spider webbing, so I backed it down to about 20, and I'm getting a lot better results. So really getting the back side of this snowplow here. I'm gonna get the back side over on the back also. Now I said I'm not too concerned about the wheels, but I'm not gonna spray them directly just to prevent from having to do a lot of cleanup. But I'm not too concerned about the wheels themselves right now. And I'm not spraying them right now. I'm just spraying right down on the edge of there, trying to make sure I catch all of the different areas so I don't have any clean spots looking up. Kind of see right here on the top of the truck right there, there's a little clean spot, and you will see that if you're sending your locomotives through tight turns, that will pop out. One of my old bosses in the oil field used to always say when we were washing our trucks, just because you can't see it doesn't mean that it didn't get dirty. So he always wanted us to be crouching down and getting up on ladders and looking at everything at different angles to see where all the dirt's accumulated. Spin it around here one more time so I can get to this side. Get the top of the trucks. You almost have to be a contortionist sometimes to hold these, especially when you're trying to get it on video. It's a lot harder than it looks. There we go. Doesn't look too bad. Kind of difficult to see. I think on the video, let me see if I can bring you in a little bit, shake you to death. You can kind of see how it's dark here, dark over this way, but kind of a clean spot that way. It's kind of interesting. It gives you a good kind of imagination on how the road grime might have been flowing on this locomotive. So I think I'm going to keep that. I really like that little effect. We got a nice little bit on the bottom of the cab here. Stairs. Those always get really dirty. Front of the cab. Not too bad. Trying to keep my fingerprints to a minimum there. And kind of the same effect over here. A little bit there. I like it. That cab look about the same. It kind of looks, you can kind of see where my overspray missed that bottom edge of that hood there. So I think I want to correct that here real quick. As you notice, I didn't remove my handrails. I kind of have the belief that you want to weather your model kind of the way it does in real life. If you think they're manufactured brand new, sparkling clean, and then they go out and start working, and over time the sun fades and they start collecting the dirt and dust. So when you weather your models, you kind of want to try and reproduce that. The sun start fading the top and the dust start accumulating. So I'm going to try and... So my point was I leave the handrails on because when it's out in nature accumulating the weathering, they don't take the handrails off while it's getting dirty. The handrails stay on, so it helps kind of keep your weathering kind of more natural. Because there could be an instance where dust is accumulating around your handrails at the bottom, but if you take your handrails off, you won't get that accumulation. Is what I'm trying to say. Alright, so there we go. I spread a really light layer there. And of course you're going to get a lot of accumulation of dust and dirt there on the walkway. Let's check this other side. Yeah, same thing on this side, so give it a quick little coat. There we go. And the back, there it is. Give a little bit on that rear platform here. Keep it in shot. And the front. That looks pretty good. And as I mentioned, remember, it's really easy to take this step too far when it comes to adding this dirt. And let me bring back one of my first ones here. You can see how I've got that dirt overspray coming way up high like that, and then it's clean over here, clean up, well, a little bit clean. So make sure you don't go over too far unless you're really looking for that that dirt way up there. A lot of times it won't come up that high. So don't overdo it. It'd be a good time right now to step away and then come back and look and see how we like it, if we want to add a little bit more. So I want to get set up to spray our clear coat again, and we'll see what we think. But so far I'm really happy.